Have any of you ever heard of Henrietta Lacks? She's been one of the most influential people in the history of modern medicine, but you still probably haven't even heard of her. She wasn't a doctor, a researcher, or any kind of medical specialist. She was actually just a patient. Her influence isn't due to anything that she did, but rather something that happened to her. As she lay dying in her hospital bed, her doctors biopsied a small piece of cancerous flesh from her cervix that would go on to change the world of modern medicine. Today I'll be giving a brief history of Henrietta Lacks, her famous HeLa cells, and the medical breakthroughs that they led to. Let's start with a brief history of Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta was born Loretta Pleasant in Roanoke, Virginia on August 1st, 1920. She was delivered in the small shack where her parents and 8 older siblings lived until 1924, when Henrietta's mother died giving birth to her 10th child. Henrietta's father couldn't handle raising 10 children on his own, so he took his children to Clover, Virginia to live with his family and work on the family farms. Henrietta ended up living with her grandfather, Tommy Lacks, in what everyone called the home house, which is the same house that their family lived in back when they were slaves. Tommy Lacks was already taking care of one of Henrietta's cousins, Day, at the time that she moved in. Day and Henrietta grew up together and eventually got married when she was 21. Once they were married, they moved to Turner Station, Maryland, where Day worked nonstop at a steel mill and Henrietta raised their children and took care of the household. According to Rebecca Skloot's book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, though they were poor, Henrietta always tried to live life to the fullest, never complaining about anything that bothered her. In 1951, after the birth of her last child, Henrietta went to Johns Hopkins with some complications. What had started out as a minor complaint for her ended up being diagnosed as cervical cancer. Henrietta ended up dying on October 4th, 1951, after a short but intense bout with the cancer. But it is what happened during her treatment that led to her significance. On February 5th, 1951, Henrietta received a biopsy report from her initial visit. The report showed that she had cervical carcinoma. Even after being told she had cancer, Henrietta refused to make a big deal about it. She simply told Day, "Ain't nothing serious wrong," and assured her family that everything was going to be just fine. The next day, they began testing Henrietta and preparing her for her operation. Henrietta's tumors were invasive, which prompted the doctors at Johns Hopkins to treat her with radium, a white radioactive metal that is basically used to burn away the carcinoma. With Henrietta unconscious on the operating table, the doctors were prepared to place tubes of radium into her cervix and sew them into place. But first, without Henrietta's consent, one of the doctors actually shaved 2 dime-sized pieces of flesh from her cervix and sent them to the lab of Dr. Guy. Dr. Guy was the head of tissue culture research at Johns Hopkins. For the previous 3 decades, Dr. Guy had been working to grow malignant cells outside of the body, trying to find a way of curing cancer. His lab received thousands of malignant cell samples, all of which died shortly after they arrived. Unlike other cells, though, Henrietta's cells, or HeLa as they're known, multiplied rapidly, making them the first immortal human cells. Because of their ability to rapidly grow and reproduce, this led to their repeated use in the field of medical research. According to Anthony Hyman, more than 65,000 scientific studies using HeLa have been published since the 1950s, and the cells have been used to study every conceivable aspect of cell physiology, as well as the basic machinery common to all cells. Dr. Guy was the first to experiment with the HeLa cells, though. Using Henrietta's cells, Dr. Guy was able to develop a successful culture medium that allowed him to transfer the cells and store them without having to worry about them dying. Because of this culture medium, he was able to send the HeLa cells safely all over the country. This eventually led to the birth of HeLa cell factories, where they rapidly grew and mass-produced the HeLa cells to be used for experimentation. Because the cells were so readily available, they were able to be used in a ton of different medical breakthroughs. One of those medical breakthroughs was actually the polio vaccine that was developed right here at Pitt. Jonas Salk observed that the HeLa cells could be infected with the polio virus very easily, which led to them dying. But because they died so easy, it made obtaining results quick and easy as he tested different vaccines on the cells. Since then, the HeLa cells have been used to test the effects of different viruses, different radiations, and other harmful elements. Even in 2011, they were used to test novel heptamethine dyes for their uses in practicality. So today you've heard a brief history of Henrietta Lacks, her famous HeLa cells, and some of the medical breakthroughs that they led to. Henrietta Lacks died before she could ever know how significant she actually was to the world of modern medicine. But it just goes to show that we all have the potential to make an impact on the world, even if we didn't mean to.